gun control. It's an issue that's been dividing our nation for quite a while. It's an issue that's used by politicians and lobbyists both to divide the voter base and to generate sympathy for their platform. There's a lot of powerful rhetoric that's used in the issues of gun control on both sides. Some of them are factual and truthful, some of them are simply opinion, but some of them are a bit misleading. Let's take a look at what is said on both sides and try to get a clear, objective view of what's really going on when it comes to the gun control debate. First of all, let's clear up what's meant by gun control. In one case of gun control, you could think of the removal of all guns from society. That's not really debated currently, except amongst extremists in the United States, so we'll disregard that argument. The second is the restriction of the ability to conceal weapons for private citizens. Now, that is on a state-by-state basis allowed in some cases, but usually pretty strictly regulated. That's a topic that is highly debated right now in the nation, and is definitely worth thinking about in the course of the gun control debate. The third is a restriction on who can own guns based on criminal background or mental health checks. There isn't a lot of division when it comes to this. The majority of Americans do believe that there should be some kind of regulation when it comes to people who have been proven dangerous to themselves or others getting a hold of guns. Fourth is the restrictions which were brought forth or mentioned in the Brady Bill, which is assault weapons, any kind of heavy weaponry that can't practically be used for self-defense or home defense. But some people still consider it their rights to have them. That's another facet of the gun debate that we should keep in mind. Now, Americans are extremely evenly divided when it comes to gun control. The Pew Research Group this year has been keeping track of the opinions of Americans when it comes to gun control, especially after the Sandy Hook incident. And it turns out that even with that major swing, in the debate, the percentages remain basically the same. Right now, it's 50% of Americans are in favor of more gun control, while 48% of Americans are in favor of more gun rights. And while Americans see that stricter gun laws would reduce the chances or the damage done in situations of mass shootings like Sandy Hook or Columbine, most Americans also believe that stricter gun laws would make it much harder for them to defend their homes and to protect their families in case of a violent attack. Now, both sides of the gun debate, as I said, have some fairly strong rhetoric when it comes to debating. First, let's go ahead and talk on the thoughts supporting gun control. The first and most prevalent argument that I've experienced is that fewer guns mean less violent crime. Whether that's true or not depends greatly on the data that you're looking at and how you interpret it. It's actually amazing how differently analysts can interpret data depending on who it is that's looking at it and what kind of controls or like modifiers that they put on the data. For instance, do they segregate gun violence depending on whether the individual owned the gun and it was already registered? Should they be weeding out handguns versus assault guns versus long guns like rifles or shotguns? There's a lot of debate when it comes to this, and it's really interesting to see how much that kind of clarifying data can sway the argument one way or the other. A widely accepted set of studies by John R. Lott Jr. Interprets the data, the exact same data as are used in the pro-gun control advocates. He actually predicts that with increased gun ownership, there will be a decrease in violent crimes. There's a lot of data correlating with this, but the basics are that the more people that own guns, the less violent crimes will actually take place. it's really impossible to determine, even looking at the data and assuming that you're interpreting it correctly, whether the fact that higher gun ownership is actually creating more crime or a more criminal society, or if the fact that people own more guns is indicative that the society is already more violent. In this case, you can look at America or Ireland, which both have fairly high murder rates and both have weapons. But both societies traditionally have had more violent cultures than a lot of the other points of data that we can collect from other countries or other parts of the world that have actually recorded this type of thing and have made studies of it. So it's really hard to say one way or the other. To use this argument on either side, I believe, is pushing things. You really should look into the facts behind the data and the research that was done and what controlling factors were before you accept this type of argument. Another, to me, unfortunate tendency of pro-gun control advocates is they use these major events, these tragedies throughout American history, to say we need more gun control. Like Columbine, the Columbine incident in the 90s, and Sandy Hook much more recently, where crazy people went and killed a bunch of people, innocent children, in schools. And it was certainly possible for them to do more damage because they got a hold of weapons. However, the ability to predict whether gun control, stricter gun controls, all the way up to the point of removing all guns from society, which certainly would have eliminated these particular incidents. But even if these guns were registered, there's no way to say that these kids couldn't have gotten a hold of guns on the black market, where there are always illegal items. Or their parents could have been registered, because in most cases these parents were perfectly normal, upstanding citizens who very easily could have qualified for firearms and had them in the house that the kids could have gotten a hold of. Never underestimate the ingenuity of crazy people when they really want to do something crazy. And second, we want to touch on some views that are against gun control and for what's considered, or what's called, the right to carry, which some states have. The right to carry indicates that unless you've done something to negate it, you have the right to bear arms. Now, crime prevention through deterrence is the biggest pro-gun issue, and this suffers from the same issues as the anti-gun or the pro-gun control lobbyists do. There's just not enough data to support it. It's really impossible to say whether having more guns in society will deter crime. To use that is really subjective and honestly a matter of opinion. You shouldn't accept it as fact. There's a lot of conflicting data as far as that goes. Now, there's also the argument from the pro right to carry side that if guns are removed, there's a significantly higher chance of overreaching government and government abuse on its citizens. There are a lot of examples of similar things throughout history. All the way back, through medieval times, it was very uncommon, both from price and from law standpoint, for commoners to have weapons. The weapons belonged to those who were in control, and they controlled them very harshly. The commonly used notion that Hitler introduced gun control to Germany and then used that gun control to remove from citizens is only partly correct. Gun control was actually already a strong part of Germany before the Nazi right came into power, although he did use it to remove the arms from citizens. And Soviet Russia, however, did remove arms in their rise to socialism, communist power, and use it to suppress the people very strongly. And it's worth mentioning that after Soviet Russia removed those arms from the people, the rate of murder in the 60s and 70s in Russia was either higher or equal to that in the United States, where guns were much more prevalent. So that's an argument that should be looked at from both sides. In conclusion, there's a lot of rhetoric bandied about on both sides of the issue. Some of it's blown way out of proportion to further political agendas. Some of it's accurate, but it's portrayed incorrectly, and some of it's just fact. I strongly suggest that all of us take a look at both sides of this issue before jumping on our favorite political bandwagon and make a critical decision on this issue in the best way possible. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.